You're listening to the GM's Place, Truth Over Illusion. In Exodus 4:12, it says, "Now go, I'll help you speak, and I'll teach you what to say." This is episode 8, and this is the Life GM, Gary Moore. And in episode 8, I'm simply entitling it The GM's Framework, focusing on leadership and innovation. Now, in this episode, I want to start with a very simple recognition. You know, we're watching something powerful unfold right in front of us. Women's sports, they're no longer waiting for permission to matter. They're not just participating in the culture anymore, they're leading it. And if you care anything about leadership, innovation, and truth over illusion, you need to pay attention to what's happening today. On one particular Saturday night, and I can be specific now, this past Saturday night, the national television schedule says it all. First of all, LSU versus South Carolina, that big matchup. It had women's basketball at prime time on a national television audience. Now, I don't know the ratings yet, but I would have to believe that several millions, if not billions, of people watched that contest. On the same Saturday, the unrivaled one-on-one basketball tournament, it's a women's tournament, which it showcased creativity at its finest and competitive fire. All of this was happening right while the NBA All-Star Weekend and the 2026 Winter Olympics were taking center stage. This ain't no side story. That's the heartbeat of where sports is going. And right in the middle of it, Coach Dawn Staley won her 500th career win. 500 victories. She hasn't just stacked victories. She's built a standard. She's turned South Carolina into a powerhouse. She's turned it into a powerhouse. She's turned her players into leaders. Now that's what real leadership and innovation look like in full motion. And that is the energy that I'm bringing into this episode. In episode 7, Structure and Consequences, we talked about how systems around you either support your growth or they sabotage it. Now we're shifting the focus from the structure outside you to the framework inside you. Because when I look at Dawn Staley's journey, I see a formula built on excellence, consistency, and courage. It's repeated time after time, and it's now forcing the world to adjust. That's truth over illusion in real life. And that's where we're headed in this particular conversation today. In this episode, we're breaking down the GM framework for leadership and innovation. How do you set vision? How do you enforce standards? How do you protect culture when the world still underestimates you? We're taking what we see today in women's sports, from the LSU and South Carolina matchup to unrivaling one-on-one tournament, which I understand grossed that evening alone about 40 million in revenue share. And we're translating that into life, into your life, your work, and in your community. This isn't just about games. It's about how you lead when nobody's watching, and how you keep focusing and choosing truth over illusion. And if that's where you are right now, then this episode is for you, my friend. Now, this framework that I'm introducing you to today is called Becoming the GM of Your Life. And I built this from proximity, not from theory. See, for more than 3 decades of my adult life, I've worked very closely with younger people. I was coaching, mentoring, advising, and managing professionals. These were shot callers, decision makers. But they were relying on me for very specific advice to help them navigate their way through life. And I did it in a way that I felt was most effective. See, by being so close to young people, I grew to understand that young people, they don't really resist leadership. What they resist is the fact that they don't like being diminished by leadership. They still want to feel like they have their place in life. They still want to feel like that they can take ownership, and they want to take ownership in making their own decisions. They don't want people talking for them, speaking for them, doing for them. However, they do need help. And they don't avoid accountability. They avoid accountability, though, that comes without clarity, without you being clear to them, without them understanding, and without dignity, and without purpose. This framework, this GM framework that I'm introducing, it was built to teach decision making and not enforce compliance. That, my friend, is leadership innovation in a nutshell. Now, when I come back, I am going to break down and present to you the critical 3 stages of the GM framework. We'll discuss exactly how it works. I'm going to take a quick break and come back. The GM framework. I'm back. And as you see on the screen here, that's the GM framework in itself. And what I did was broke it down into 3 identifiable stages. And I used athletics as what I considered was the pilot of the engine. Athletics as the pilot engine. And it's what you're going to see on the screen is the pathway that I feel like leadership is going. I don't want you to miss this. So I want to go full screen on this one. The first stage is called the preseason. And as a subtitle, I have identity and alignment. That's because preseason is not about hype. It's about preparation. This is where most leadership systems fail. Because sometimes they wait for problems before they establish the standards. However, in the preseason, I project or I intend for us to establish identity prior to performance. You see it. Who am I? Not just what I do. In this particular stage, we want to clarify the roles that all of us play. Whether you're a student athlete or just a regular student, a coach, or a parent. Leadership standards is what we want to establish before the problems arise. And we want clear expectations across all programs, not just for one team or for one person. And from a leadership perspective, this reduces chaos before the season begins. Preparation is preventive leadership. Which brings us right into stage 2. The regular season. Execution and consequences. See, because this is where leadership is really tested. Because the regular season focuses on decision making under pressure, emotional discipline, and ownership instead of excuses. And this is also where I introduce what I'm calling the consequential game plan. See, most people think that consequences have to be loud you know, a sense of adversity, a loss, a pension, a failure of some type. But you know what? The real consequences are quiet, because in some of those consequences, habits are being formed. Trust sometimes is being eroded. Opportunities are quietly missed. And the consequential game plan, it comes from the advice that I always would give people, whether younger or sometimes a lot more experienced than I was in leadership. And they were just looking to bounce an idea off of someone who they knew had cared. See, in my observation of younger people, it wasn't from a distance or some study that was made from theory. I spent years listening to them, watching. I was watching how pressure shows up in real time from their peers as well as family members. And I saw times where leadership had either supported their growth or unintentionally shut it down, if that makes sense to you. And this consequential game plan, I used to always advise anyone to look at the worst case scenario. Look at the worst possible outcome of any decision that's made. And you see, you have to be stable at that point, because it required thinking under pressure. And you just slow down enough to look at the worst case or the worst result that could come, and then you work backward from there. Because at the end of the day, if you're still standing, anything that doesn't kill you, you can grow from it. And that game plan that I'm talking about, it therefore teaches leaders and future leaders to think before they act, not after they react. Think before they act. See, that was something that I gave them to think about. And that is the difference between leadership and an emotional response. And at this particular stage, this stage gives everyone a shared leadership language and not reactionary responses. Then I move on to stage 3, which I'm calling a reflection and growth. See, stage 3, I feel, is the most overlooked phase of leadership that there is. It is indeed the most overlooked phase of leadership that there is. Because, see, the season ends, but the lessons should not end. You should always continue learning, always continue growing. And you will. If in the postseason, your leadership focuses on reflection, and I'm talking reflection without blame, careful and critically thought out evaluation without any ego being involved. And then you can have growth that carries forward. See, meaning that you don't always have to be there to lead. If you lead before problems arise, if you advise in the right way, if you allow people, whether they're young or older than you, to take ownership in the decisions that they make and be able to hold themselves accountable for the results thereof. See, that's how you carry that growth forward. And this is also where continuity is built. Because without reflection, man, without reflection, you don't grow. You just repeat the same cycle over and over again. And leadership that repeats the same issues year after year is not leadership. It's survival then. Always keep that in mind. And as I close today, I want to leave you with the question. The one question that I feel that matters. And that is this. How do we explore this responsibility together and in a way that serves us all in the long term? I'm the Life GM. This is the GM's place. Truth over illusion. If you need to get in hold of me, you know where to find me. Just visit www.thegarydmore.com. Visit my online courses. Go into my store. See my scholarship, my endowed scholarship programs. See some of the things that I am using that I know works and could always be the GM of your life, because your life is in fact an organization. First and foremost, only you are ultimately responsible. Have a good day. See you next time.